Thank you for being here. I am Abdelghani Barre of Metro Social Services, and on behalf of Metro Social Services, we welcome you for the 13th annual Community Needs Evaluation. It's good to be back, especially at this facility after 2 years due to the pandemic. So it's so nice to see many familiar faces and many new friends. I would like to acknowledge our board chair, Ms. Charlotte Peacock, and without the guidance of our board and their support, we won't be able to produce the kind of document that we would like to share with you today. I would also like to recognize, if they are in the audience, some of the elected officials that have signed up for the event. And I would say if Council Lady Berkeley Allen is in the audience, we would like to acknowledge her. Councilman Bob Nash, it's good to see you. And Council Lady Nancy Van Rees, NVR, we call her. I would also like to acknowledge Judge Linda Jones. Good morning. Thank you for being here. We thank the West End Community Church that has allowed us to use this wonderful facility. So we appreciate the collaboration, but also we are expressing our gratitude. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Ms. Carol Peterson of Uprise.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of Owns Nashville. Uprise is a ministry of West End Community Church, and on behalf of West End, I want to welcome you all here today. For the first 15 years of my work life, I worked as a lawyer, but not the kind of lawyer that writes contracts and sues people. I was a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles. I used to send informants into dangerous situations wearing a tiny video camera hidden in the button of their shirt. I tried cases where defendants were sentenced to 20-year mandatory minimum sentences for distributing just a few grams of crack cocaine. And I took that job because I thought that I was going to be doing justice. Well, I can stand here and I can tell you that I never prosecuted anyone who I thought was innocent. I can't stand here and tell you that I always did justice, because you don't have to be in that job for very long before you realize that justice looks different depending on what side of the courtroom you are on. And some of my experiences as a prosecutor motivated me to change my life direction. If I was going to spend the first 15 years in that way, I wanted to spend the next 15 years doing some things differently. So Uprise is a career development program that helps people who are impacted by poverty get training and education to get on a career path with upward mobility. Our graduates are earning nearly $22,000 per year more in their first year of work, and they're experiencing a 57% reduction in the need for SNAP benefits. We run 3 cohorts a year. As we're talking here this morning, there are 25 people who are upstairs on the 2nd floor of this building, and they are just at the start of their Uprise journey. They started last week, and we have another cohort that will start again in October. But Uprise is only 5 years old, and we could not be where we are today without some very important people. And some of those very important people are sitting here in this room today. And I hope that you will recognize some of the stories that I'm about to share. So this is Patrick. And Patrick came to Uprise earlier this year from the Nashville Rescue Mission's Life Recovery Program. And as Patrick healed from his addictions through that Life Recovery Program, he worked on his education, his career skills, his interviewing, his resumes at Uprise. And when he got out of training camp, he got a job as a plumber's apprentice at Boone Creek Plumbing. He has been on the job for about 90 days, and he is thriving in his new career. He's already gotten 2 new pay raises, and we are so excited for Patrick. This is Jalen, and Jalen graduated from high school in the midst of the pandemic. She didn't really know what she wanted to do with her life, but she was pretty clear that it didn't involve college. And in the months after her graduation, she started to flounder a little bit. And her high school counselor at Metro Nashville Public Schools saw it. And she picked up the phone and she called Uprise. And within 10 months of that phone call, Jalen was standing on this stage, graduating with her clinical medical assistant certification. She now works for Pinnacle Dermatology, and she is thriving in her new career. This is Chelsea, and Chelsea came to Uprise when she was living homeless at the YWCA's women's shelter with her 2 young daughters. And Chelsea came through and with the help of Goodwill got her Google IT certification, and then Uprise helped her get a job at Asurion and then a second job at Google. Chelsea was recently voted to be one of Nashville's 40 under 40, which is pretty darn incredible. But what I think is kind of even more amazing is that she is financially stable. She can take her kids on vacation. And she's also started her own nonprofit where she helps people who are whose relatives are incarcerated in places that are far away cities or states, get transportation they need so that they can visit their loved ones. She also comes back to Uprise in every class and talks to our leaders. She serves on our advisory board, which technically makes her my boss and means I have to listen to what she tells me to do. And I love that too. So Patrick, Jalen's, and Chelsea's journeys would not have been possible without community partners like the United Way, that I believe is here today, Family and Children's Services, the Nashville Food Project, places that are providing wraparound services that our leaders need, things like access to insurance and mental health services. But community partners are not the only ones that are making a difference. And I want to highlight some people who are making an enormous difference in our city, and those are our employer partners, places like Belmont University and Vanderbilt Medical Center. Tiffany, Jessica, and Victoria came to Uprise thinking that their lives were going to be defined by mistakes in their past. Jessica, who's standing with her hands in her pockets, told me once, I have made so many mistakes. I have burned so many bridges. I don't think there's any hope left for me. But as these young women worked to gain job skills and certifications at Uprise, Belmont and Vanderbilt saw young women who were capable, who were determined, and who could make an enormous impact in their workplaces. Tiffany, who is seated in the flowered dress, is in her second year working at Belmont University School of Nursing, and she's a program administrator there. And Jessica and Victoria are clinical medical assistants at Vanderbilt Medical Center because these organizations gave them a chance. Victoria and Jessica just received the highest raises possible in their annual review, and they are thriving and stable in their new careers. So today, I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who is here fighting the good fight against seemingly insurmountable barriers and kind of against all odds. Thank you for being an integral part of this community. I'm putting my contact information up on the screen because I hope that you will give me a call. I would love to meet with you or have a member of my team meet with you, take you out for coffee, and talk about ways that we can solve some of the problems that our city faces together. Because the problems that we face are huge. Homelessness, people who lack childcare, refugees, people who are justice impacted or who desperately need mental health care. All of these problems are too big for us to solve on our own. None of us are equipped, whether we're government or nonprofits or individuals, to tackle those problems individually. But when we confront them together, we can do justice for the people that we serve. We can love our neighbors, and we can make Nashville a community of opportunity. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Garrett Harper, who is here with the 2022 Community Needs Evaluation.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you again to West End Community Church for extending hospitality to us today, and thank you, Carol, for sharing the outstanding work of Uprise Nashville. The year 2021 represented a year of challenge for persons in Nashville, the nation, and the world. While the unevenness of recovery from a pandemic, a tornado, a flood gave reason for hope, the new economic and social challenges and uncertainties from 2021 and into 2022 have been extraordinary. Financial pain has increased for many, and that pain has extended into new groups. Relying on a metaphor that seems appropriate to that economic pain, the big squeeze, illustrates the increasing inability to make ends meet for households that are already struggling, to those that are new to hardship of managing a household budget. So the big squeeze, for many, is not only a term, but a lived experience. One where that which was certain and reliable one by one vanishes. The scope and the breadth of the big squeeze are startling, even to those who've experienced hardship of experiences long past. Loosely stated, housing in Nashville is up 20% or more in a year. Gasoline costs higher than ever experienced. Childcare costs at record highs. What has not kept pace, clearly, are wages and salaries. The conclusion easily is that many Nashvillians are notably and noticeably worse off in 2022 than they were in 2021. In fact, recent research from the University of Michigan stated that Americans across the nation have experienced the most severe decline in real earnings since 1932. I'll repeat that Americans have experienced the most severe decline in real wages since 1932 in the past year. Not that the period leading to 2021 was already not positive for many. Male earnings increased in real terms by only 12% in the previous 20 years. Female earnings in Nashville lagged far behind those, as we see. And while apartment rents already began their rapid ascent in recent years, a U.S. minimum wage that remains stuck now for 13 years at just over $7 an hour, resulting in a loss of 21% in value during that period, losing value of a third since the high point of meaning and value for the U.S. minimum wage in the late 1960s. Currently, over 200,000 workers in Davidson County earn less than $39,000 a year. Let's hold that number in our mind. If we take those 200,000 persons to be working in poverty-level jobs, there will be 8,000 more of those types of jobs in a decade's time. The wages may inch up slightly, but there will be more poverty-level workers in 10 years in Nashville than today, based on the current structure of our industries. The economic structure of Davidson County is such that there are large numbers of low-wage and low-skill jobs. Education for individuals may mean that those individuals can move into new and better-paying jobs, but it will not mean that there are not still 200,000 plus low-paying jobs in Nashville. It would simply be myopia or wishful thinking to regard education as the complete societal means to eliminate low-skill and low-wage workers and their jobs. The real question is and remains, who will be prepared and expected to assume those low-wage roles? Will it be Nashville's existing population, while more affluent, more skilled workers may be recruited for high-paying jobs in companies and sectors new to the area? This question of intentional business development and its consequences are really central to understanding the nature of poverty in Nashville, who is affected, and how this poverty relates to systems of education, health, transportation, and housing. In fact, we increasingly have industries where wages grow and industries where they do not. In Nashville 20 years ago, as we see on the chart on the left, all Nashville sectors were paying an average monthly income between $2,000 and $4,000 a month. Today, several, hospitality and food services, retail, manufacturing, education, they remain in that very same place, $2,000 to $4,000 a month on average. While salaries in other industries are soaring upward. Yet these industries with little change in earnings, those that haven't changed in the 20 years, employ a great number of the 200,000 workers that are earning at more meager levels. In short, the many experience slow or no growth in wages, where the few and often newcomers may experience high levels of salary growth. In the U.S., we see the changes that have occurred over the decades. In many ways, Nashville mirrors the nation. Wages of the top 1% of earners are up 179% in 40 years. At the same time, the bottom 90% of earners in our nation are at a new low in terms of their share of the total income of the nation. In fact, the disparities are greater now than at any time since the 1920s, nearly 100 years ago. Economic well-being in this context is for the few and not for the many. With each business cycle, average workers' share of corporate income falls yet again. Across 40 years, each economic recovery seems to lead to greater disadvantage for average workers relative to the wealth created for the few. We're now reminded at this juncture in 2022 of potentially yet another downturn in the economy nationally, and can only speculate what impacts await workers' earnings in the years ahead. And the gender imbalances, they're stark. By the year 2057, women in Tennessee may achieve pay equity with men, only 35 years to wait. Meanwhile, women in Nashville earn less than men, are more likely to be out of work and looking for work, are more reliant on public benefits, and more often lack health insurance. As we will see, the issues faced by women in Nashville are central as well to understanding poverty and how it's perpetuated. The precariousness of many low-paying jobs is evident in Nashville, where workers in one poverty wage role can often at best hope only to move to another poverty wage role. Nearly half of the jobs in the region are at risk of loss due to automation, according to the Brookings Institution. Sectors that are most at risk often disproportionately employ minority workers. Those already in difficult circumstances are further challenged by continuous disruptions to their livelihood by technological change. There's frequent use of the term a living wage. Not a new term, not a new concept. But attention to the respected MIT living wage calculator provides a sense of what a living wage feels like in Nashville, and the data shown in the slide is for Nashville, for Davidson County. For one person living alone, basic necessities are met at $36,000 a year. For an adult with one child, it rises to $63,000 a year. Just glancing at the detail in the table for food, childcare, healthcare, housing, and other needs seems to resonate with other data and the lived experience of any of us who live in Nashville regarding cost of living. Half. Recalling that half of the workers in Nashville earn less than $39,000 a year, we begin to see that half of the city residents are in some level at or below living wage poverty. We further recognize that census data show that half or more of households in Nashville earn below levels needed that are identified in the MIT Living Wage Calculator for Davidson County. Why a living wage for poverty as a measure? The U.S. government formula for poverty was developed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in 1963. It represents a household food budget multiplied by 3. It's the same threshold for poverty in Manhattan and Mississippi, for Davidson County, and for Tennessee's most rural counties. The federal government threshold for poverty for one individual is $13,590. I'll repeat that. The federal government threshold for poverty for one person is $13,590 a year. A person living in Nashville will be living above poverty, according to that measure, if they earn $14,000 a year. $14,000 a year to pay for rent, food, healthcare, transportation, and all other needs. Just as a minimum wage not rising in 13 years at the federal level, so poverty measures that fail to match a reality of life in 2021, not only in Nashville, but in many parts of the country, may require alternatives that provide a useful understanding of what economic hardship and economic well-being really are in people's daily lives. Further, many governmental assistance programs base their eligibility on what may be regarded as antiquated or unhelpful measures. Assistance for human and social needs through these programs is then unavailable for those with incomes above all but the most meager levels. So here, who experiences poverty, even with those government measures? Who is in poverty in Nashville? 1 in 5 Hispanic persons. 1 in 5 part-time workers. Nearly half of single Black women with children. 1 in 5 Nashville children. 1 in 5 persons with a disability. To use the living wage calculations, we likely would find higher, perhaps far higher levels of poverty across each of these populations. Even so, what does it mean for an affluent city to have 1 in 5 children live in poverty, as the consistent data point out year in and year out? Remarkable economic growth in recent years has done little to alter the measures shown on this slide, which look strikingly similar to data from 2010 or 2000 or 1990. In fact, any point in the past 50 years. What happens when the living wage poverty measure is applied across other populations? In Nashville, official measures show 1 in 10 seniors living in poverty, below the poverty threshold. About 1/4 of Nashville households earn Social Security income, and 1 in 7 have retirement income. Those incomes, as we see here, are about $20,000 and $25,000 a year for Social Security and for retirement income. Remember then the calculations on the living wage calculator. $36,000 a year for one single adult. Those persons that lived and worked in Nashville for decades now quite often face real or de facto lives of poverty through low fixed incomes, extraordinary housing, health, and living cost increases, and few or no alternatives available. Others are caught up in the hardship. More than 1 in 4 Nashvillians with a disability lives below the 150,000 mark of the threshold of the government measure for poverty. Fully 30,000 Nashvillians over the age of 65 have at least one disability. Housing, transportation, education, employment. All of these become added challenges to the economic squeeze occurring across the population. The continued increase in the share of the elderly population means that there is a greater need to attend to services to meet those needs of those populations. Nashvillians, through the big squeeze, have increasingly found affordability a challenge. In 2021, more people moved out of Nashville-Davidson County than moved in, a fact that has been demonstrated every year since 2017. From this, then, population growth, or at least population growth alone, could not be the explanation for housing cost rises in Davidson County, because population loss instead has been the reality. Census data consistently show that while suburban counties continue to grow in the Nashville region, partly based on outmigration of working-class Nashville residents, the net result in Davidson County has been historically low population growth, or even decline in recent years. Family households with children may exit the city, while young single persons from other parts of the country may migrate in, resulting in clear disruptions to housing, transportation, education, and, yes, fuel for the big squeeze. In fact, about 40 more persons moved out of Davidson County daily than moved into Davidson County in 2021. The trend pattern is clear, as shown in the slide. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau. Across the nation, homeowners feel house poor, many unable to experience a life of well-being and basic needs, where housing costs consume more and more of income. This is felt more strongly among single persons and women heading households. About 1/3 of Nashville households are headed by single women. Other children are raised by grandparents. Fewer than 1 in 8 Nashville households are married couples with children. In short, the composition of Nashville households by type, gender, presence of children, accumulated wealth, seems rather different from those moving in and those leaving Nashville of necessity. And these are not new phenomena. This is for the U.S. that's shown in the data currently on the slide. In fact, it reminds us that over the past 50 years, the type of household has continued to reshape itself in our nation. Recognizing the large decline of children in two-parent households requires a reality check on what it means for a society, a nation, a city, in terms of needs and filling those needs for education, healthcare, childcare, housing, and transportation. Women lacking paid leave, already in jobs paying less than men, may simply find it impossible to be a part of the labor force. The events rising out of the pandemic revealed patterns that may linger on. 3 million women leaving the workforce since 2020, and millions overall across the nation leaving because of other household responsibilities to care for those with disabilities, elder care, and other needs. An economic hardship expressed through hunger emerged in new and unexpected ways and places and populations throughout the pandemic. More than 1 in 10 Nashvillians in 2021 experiences hunger and lacks food. And 1 in 7 children, often those lacking access to programs based on federal poverty measures. The difficulties of children before and during the pandemic are exhibited in student outcomes that paint a picture of a population that too often may be tied to eventually poverty-level jobs, as we mentioned a moment ago. Fewer than 1 in 5 public school students in Nashville is fully prepared to graduate and go on to further education. Large numbers of students fail to graduate in 4 years, including many of the most vulnerable populations in our city. So the squeeze. It affects the city widely and for many that struggle with already difficult issues of food security, health issues, basic education. Home prices continue an unprecedented race upward. Apartment rents continue an unprecedented race upward. Only wages languish far, far, far behind, and that then becomes the big squeeze. As stated, households with children experience unique challenges. 40% of U.S. households have gone into debt to pay for childcare. Costs have far exceeded income gains for decades, as we saw. Large numbers of households make clear the deep hardship in making childcare fit in as a part of a living wage budget, with nearly all low-wage households in this situation expressing concern in meeting those needs. And even in the existential matters of climate change, those in poverty of all types are likely to experience greater difficulty. The poor often live with the highest exposure to extreme weather events and to climate change. Gentrification becomes another means of displacing the poor and those persons and places associated with poverty, replacing them with more affluent newcomers able to contend with those changes in climate. Collectively, it represents a picture of both the big squeeze, but also the big squeeze in terms of well-being for a population, of a world, a nation, a state, a city. Collectively, the big squeeze points back to well-being. Gains and losses, recently great, the challenges. Well-being is fundamentally an economic and a social construct. The Gallup organization defines well-being as career well-being, social and financial well-being, physical and community well-being. Whole persons, whole households, families, neighborhoods, where no type of a squeeze characterizes the life that we live in community. That is a goal to strive for, guided here by data, by information, and by insights into the meaning that those bring to us. Many aspects of economic and social well-being of residents in Nashville are at an inflection point. To consider more of what this means for us, I'd like now to turn the program over to Mr. Eddie Latimer. Eddie is the CEO of Affordable Housing Resources Incorporated here in Nashville. His work is recognized locally and around the country for its many achievements. He's dedicated his career for many years to the important work of leading Nashville efforts to ensure that housing opportunities are a part of that well-being of countless residents. So welcome to the stage, Mr. Latimer.
Hey, nice to see you all. First of all, let's just acknowledge the incredible work that these guys, MSS, does for us every year through this study. I've gotten to know Garrett and Abdel-Johnny really well the last years, and as well as a lot of y'all through this social work God gave us put in our blood, and it's just been a blessing. So I'm grateful for that. But related to that, I also want us to do a round of applause just for the joy of being back in flesh and blood community and seeing familiar faces. This whole thing really is about community. So based on that report, the question, and I've been able to spend the last few weeks in it, and it's really an amazing thing. But based on that report, how then should we live? How should we live? Us, the people in this room, the people who somehow by the grace of God, humanitarian, spiritual, whatever that is for you, but somehow by the grace of God care more about people than just money, who care more about people than just booming, who care more about the fact that all boats need to rise in a period of prosperity. You know, everybody could have that, but some of us got it and some of them didn't. Some didn't. So, but to do this, I want to give you a quick story. This may have happened to you, but I have to drive to Chattanooga quite a bit. And, you know, the freeways are more crowded than you want them to be, especially with semis. But this is an event that happens more and more often, is a truck in the left lane, in the right lane, decides to pass the truck ahead of it. And so they pull in the left lane and they get into this passing bid at a great 3 mile an hour difference in speeds. And every time you hit a hill, even though the truck in the left lane's gained somehow it's got a heavier load and it falls back and the other guy goes ahead. So you do that, and you know, initially there's 6 cars behind it, and then 12, and then 25, and then 40. And I don't even know. One time we couldn't even find out how many cars. It was a hilly part of the trip, and we couldn't even count the number of cars. So you start saying, you know, I actually need to be in Chattanooga for a reason, and it's related to clocks and time, and I just really can't afford to sit here. But these two guys are just going along, fighting it out over their little egos about who can go 3 miles an hour faster than the other one. And all the people behind it are being impacted. Because I'm sure there are people down there going to family things, going to funerals, going to business meetings. They may need to be in Florida before dark, whatever it is. And these guys are there. So the question is, are they responsible for their behavior? Are they accountable to anybody? So you start off with that and you go, well, what laws have been violated? None. The faster cars in the left lane, the slower trucks in the right lane, they're doing all that right, and even though it is 3 miles an hour. So really the issue of being accountable is a civil issue. It's not a legal issue. So whatever happened to that thing our parents taught us is treat people the way you want them to treat you. So are these truck drivers, are they treating me the way is this how they would want me to meet them, to treat them in the restaurant or wherever I run into them? I really think the answer to that's no. So I'm going to continue to weave in and out of housing because it's really a great measuring stick on where we are. But the historic lack of affordable housing, we've always been $15,000 to $20,000 units short since I got into this 30 years ago. And the current last 5 years, just aggressive destruction of the existing affordable housing is just seen as an unintended consequence of the boom. Like those truck drivers interfering with the lives of the 40 cars behind them is an unintended consequence of their egos fighting each other. They didn't do this to mess up my life. But that's what happens. And this is what's happening right now as we're in a boom. And as Garrett pointed out, and as when you get this study, you'll get to look for yourself. It's unintended consequences, but yet they're real consequences. And the damage is basically on our workforce and those who make less. Now I'm going to do another quick story. There's an Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures, there's this Old Testament guy named Ezekiel. It's a strange book. He's a strange man. He has all these great visions. And it's one of my favorite books because it's so relevant. The visions and the stories he has are so relevant to today. And one of them is, he tells us, he has this vision of this herd of sheep going down the road and going through the pastures. And some of the sheep are just big. They're bigger by birth. They have a bigger body, they have bigger horns, they have bigger shoulders. And the other sheep are more normal. And so, but what happens is every time they come upon a new field or they come upon a new spring, the bigger sheep, unintentionally, but nonetheless they can do it because of their size, cut out the weaker normal sheep. And they cut them out from the good water, and they cut them out from the good grass, and they cut them out from other food sources. And they just do it unintentionally, but they do it because they can. It's the result of uncontrolled appetite that really causes them to cut these people out, their sheep, other sheep. And at the end, it's real interesting. You know, God says, I'm going to hold them accountable. I'm going to hold these big sheep who I made big, I'm going to hold them accountable for cutting out the normal and the weak. I don't know what that looks like. I have no idea. I'm glad I'm not responsible for it. But there is a sense of accountability for those truck drivers, just like there was a sense of accountability for those sheep. And there's a sense of accountability for what's going on in Nashville. And as Garrett pointed out, this is really common throughout the whole country. So who should care? Well, y'all care. We care. Our networks care. We care. People of faith, people who have humanitarian values, people who understand that life is a balance between law and morals. If you do all law, you're going to create death. If you do all morals, you're going to create some kind of civic disorder. So it's just both. So there's really a lack of leadership by the people that we decide to oversee our city. Displacement from unrestrained growth. There's no guidelines, there's no policy, there's nothing to preserve Nashville as a city for all. We have this new skilled workforce that's moved in, and they came in for high-paying jobs, all of them 6 figures and higher. They didn't come in for these low-income jobs. And what they do, and I have a couple on my street, and they're great people. We really like them. We eat dinner with them, and they sit on the front porch and talk and visit with them. They're really nice people. And they used to live in D.C., and they know great restaurants. So every time I go up there, they send me to a new great restaurant. So they're friends, they're neighbors. But yet at the same time, they bought a home at the end of our street, and nobody would buy because it was too expensive. So they're unintentionally driving up the cost, but they are not the problem. They are a symptom of the problem. The migration of skilled workers is a real thing in driving up our cost, but couldn't we run programs? Carol, what's the name of your group again? Uprise. Like Uprise is doing it. The Urban League has job skill programs. Several churches have job skill programs. I'm sure some of your nonprofits have them. But couldn't we get the people into these skilled programs so that they can fill some of these jobs we're bringing people in to fill? And guess what? If these people move up, that leaves a vacancy so these people can move up. I mean, we're not taking care of ourselves. But The biggest challenge to all of this is a great portion of our city economy depends on low jobs, low income, low paying jobs. Hotels, food, entertainment, retail, metro public schools, metro and state government. They all depend upon the low income jobs to survive. So our growth has not been organic. We are bringing in outsiders to do the really plum jobs and leaving locals behind. And now with the housing problem, we're even telling locals, well, you could go live in Columbia without even blinking an eye. So, and this is all being allowed. It's being allowed by the people who should be stewards of the city. So what is our leadership's goal? The welfare of our community, the whole community, or is it just the boom? So as Garrett clearly pointed out, and one day you'll get one of these you can actually hold. And this study will show you is that 50% are doing well and 50% are under $39,000 in personal income. Now, if you're lucky enough to marry somebody else making $39,000, you're in good shape. You're at $80,000, you're great. You can fit into Nashville really well. But if you're a single mom with 2 kids, your life is going to be challenging. So what laws are being violated by our city? How does the concern for profit over people, what does that violate? It doesn't violate any laws, but it does violate the heart and the soul and the purpose. So who is responsible to ensure that all boats rise with this boom? You know what? I'll say that we need to accept some of that accountability of standing by, watching, allowing the stronger sheep edge out the weaker and normal sheep. I mean, most of us go to work every day. We've been blessed with a job. We can go to work every day and work with this group. So these are flesh and blood people for us. Does raw capitalism, and I'm a capitalist. I was a Marxist for a while and flirted around with socialism, but I'm a capitalist. But does raw capitalism, just pure book stuff, the worship of money, does it have a conscience? But who's supposed to put a conscience on it? Who brings in the spiritual, the ethical, the humanitarian points of view? Because really life is not legal, it's legal balanced by moral. Because it's about flesh and blood, it's about people. And, you know, God's okay, from everything I've read and books and everything, is that the different income wages are not his issue. The issue is that this group and the power structure somehow ensure that people don't just get completely run over like those sheep that can't get to the food. Community only works if morals are allowed to influence the legal. Okay, so what I do is in housing, is housing can be addressed. We have a great nonprofit housing community, one of the largest, healthiest in the South. But we're not gaining ground. We haven't gained ground in 10 years. We're not even keeping up because of the destructive pattern. I mean, I live in East Nashville. I know some of y'all do. And, I can show you whole streets over there by what used to be the Family Wash, or Vinyl Tap, is that it? And that whole street where they tore down mill houses. And it used to be on the front porch of those mill houses, there were people playing guitars there because that's where all your entertainment people lived. And now they're all these 3-story tall and skinnies. And sort of our, sort of the joke is what's going to happen in 5 years when those millennials have to paint the third story? Do they know how much that ladder is going to cost them? More than the paint. So to do affordable housing is really easy. All you need is money. And guess what? We are flush with money. We have great banks in this town who are willing to lend us money to build stuff. I mean, we are blessed with a plethora of community banks who really care about the community. And we have a lot of grants. I'll get into that in a minute, but national grants as well as local. The second thing you need is materials. Well, materials are horrible, and they're a direct casualty of the pandemic. Because if you recall, 2 years ago, everybody was going, oh my God, we're not going to get out of this thing. And so people weren't building homes, they weren't doing anything. So everybody that had the supply, and the supply industry said, well, I can't pay these people, I got to shut down. So this is true in everything, every industry. I don't care if it's electronic or housing or whatever it is, food. Everybody cut back, and so we're just now starting to see that we're getting close. We're making a little dent and getting caught up again. But in construction, we're not making that dent because they can make so much money producing less today than they did before that the incentive to produce more is minimized. And then the third thing you see that we need, so you need money, you need materials and labor. And the third thing is you need land. And we don't have any. Pretty much all the land in this city has been bought up by investors. And what happened is when the tornado hit North Nashville, they discovered in that 10-day window between the tornado and the official declaration of COVID, they discovered that 74% of the housing units in North Nashville were renters. So the landlord's sitting there going like, okay, to get this home rebuilt, I got to deal with FEMA. And literally, you'd rather have a root canal on all 4 of your back molars than to deal with FEMA. And we had to deal with them after Katrina, and it was just like, if you could circumvent them, you did. And the other thing you have to deal with is the insurance company who's like FEMA, but they've been taught to smile at you. So these guys go, so the owner of these things go, you mean I can get all my money out from you, Mr. Investor, and you'll pay me this, and I don't have to deal with those 2 people for 15 months? And they go, and so they do it. They just started selling out, and that sort of started our whole ball of selling out at a higher inflated price. And the more these things sold, the greater the inflation of the price went. So now you got North Nashville, which has been a historic African-American neighborhood, and the historic part is pretty much gone except for the remaining churches and educational institutions and things like that. Now, one other good piece of news is that there is a rumor that Metro is trying to organize all the land they own. I mean, they own so much land, but a lot of it's really junk land. Like they widened the street, so they wound up, instead of with the full lot, they have a lot that's like 20 feet by 100. I mean, you can't do anything with it. So they're trying to get all that weeded out from the parcels they own that are really big. So this would be Metro Water, Metro Public Schools. They're trying to get a handle of this. So if that rumor's true, that's going to produce a lot of land that they say they want to commit most of it to affordable housing. So that's a great deal. Metro has 5 grant programs now for housing. The one y'all all know the best is the Barnes Fund, which has been a very successful program, and it's been a real blessing. And then we have this new thing called a Catalyst Fund, which is set aside $20 million, I think, so that you can, if an apartment building went for sale, instead of an investor buying it, you could go up to it and say, I don't want to buy that, and I'm going to keep it affordable. And the city would lend you that land for a few years until you could get the financing worked out on it. And then there's 3 other grant programs, roughly $10 million each, that just was launched less than 10 days ago. So the city's got stuff going on. But we have a way to catch up. So what are we going to do now? Well, I really like and appreciate the fact that the study ends with this section on well-being. You have the career well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, community well-being, and being a non-city employee, I would put spiritual well-being. But they didn't do that. I did, just so you know. But I think that there would be a lot of people there that would agree. So we really want to have a city that creates well-being for everyone, or the opportunity for well-being for everyone. Problem with the boom is the opportunities that are disappearing faster than the actual abilities. So what should be done to preserve Nashville's entire community? I got a friend over at TSU who does statistics, and what he's learned from following population trends is a large portion of our African-American population is moving out of the county, which is part of that population loss that they talk about. Rutherford County has seen an increase in African-American population of over 50%. Where'd they come from? So what should we do? I mean, are we just to stand by and watch? So when are we, the people with morals, who have humanitarian, religious ethics, people who believe that everyone needs some benefit from this prosperity, so when are we going to actually wake up and strengthen what remains? When are we going to start doing something? Metro Social Service can't take us here. And I don't know what you could do, but I know as a group like this, I bet a lot of y'all are writers. And I bet you can write to your council people. I bet you can write to the mayor. I bet you could write to corporations if you have connections. And just start making people aware that they need to do a better job of caring for the bottom 50%. Maybe not as much as they do for the top, but they got to do more for the bottom 50% through offering better jobs, better pay, through offering some kind of policies that restrict land use, to really follow through on this land study and figure out what land the city has that they could use to create affordable housing with. There are a lot of things like that that we could look at and do. And this is not a moral finger pointing. I mean, that's really true of me. I mean, I get out there and get to go to work every day and do something, this sort of a social job. And, but as an individual, I could do more. You know, I could do more. I am going to start writing more. I had a head start on thinking this through with y'all, but I am going to start writing more. And this is a great study, and you're going to make it available soon. Yes. They have some protocol they have to work through. They have done a great job of pointing it out, but really those of us who see life as a physical existence and a moral existence, we have really figured out in individual ways we need to get things moving. So I really thank y'all for the opportunity to speak here. I really thank you for the clear roadmap you've given us about where we are in this place and time. And I know we will all be concerned and in prayerful thought just on what do we do with this, because we can no longer stand around and watch this occur without writing a letter or doing something of something that makes those in power aware of the need. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Eddie. that was informative, challenging, and uplifting. So thank you. The data points that Dr. Harper presented this morning, if you look at that, whether it was about hunger, unemployment, single-parent households, it seems it's a horrible picture. But the puzzle that we see is, on one side, you see Nashville, since I came here, is more prosperous now, larger, many new people. But also, if you look at the skyline, it's a wonderful place. And you say, how can I reconcile the data points that show it's 200,000 people making only $39,000? Only 1 out of 5 of our MNPS graduates are able to enroll and finish college. So you would say, how did this puzzle happen? But the good thing is that if you look at historically, Nashville is a good place. During the civil rights movement, we saw what the sit-ins and the late John Lewis and others, what they did. And Diane Nash confronting Mayor West and giving him a choice, Nashville to be a place for everybody or for the few. Also, if you look at immigrant integration in Nashville, it is one of the places that rest of the world says is a good place for people to integrate. Some of you are familiar with Conexión Americas. It's a wonderful place on Nolensville Road, founded by 2 wonderful immigrants from Latin America. It attracted the President of the United States a few years ago, Barack Obama, to come there and acknowledge the work that they do. So Nashville is a wonderful place. We have wonderful academic institutions, historic, and produce talented people every day. So my job this morning is to try and see if we can reconcile the two and say, what's happening? And Eddie has said what we need to do, to write letters, to do other things. But you just can't help but to say, Nashville is a runaway train. And runaway train don't end up in a good place. It will wreck, it will do damage, would be hard to figure it out after that. But many communities around the world, they established some kind of principles. And I will try to answer this question later. The question you would ask is, who owns Nashville? This is huge geography, 500 square miles, 35 council districts, many cities in there. And you would say, who owns it? Last time I asked you that question, a lot of people got it wrong. But you don't have to share with me now. Think about it. So we're talking about the well-being of the resident population. All times, places, and manner. If we think about the single parents, the statistic that Garrett showed, I think where they were like 34% of city households. And another statistic that we haven't shared is the latest one that we saw. I think it's 2019. There were 3,000 children born to mothers who are on Medicaid. That means the mothers are poor. If you are in Tennessee, if you get Medicaid, you must be so poor. Because we don't have Obamacare expansion, so the state legislature tries to squeeze. So think about those 3,000 kids. They will need Head Start, kindergarten, childcare, and then start enrolling in our school system. But we know that children who come from poor households, what happens to them when they try to experience the American dream? So we need to say as a principle, can we care the well-being of everybody, from those 3,000 kids to the 30,000 65 and older with disability, and in between? Can we care about the well-being of those gentrified in North Nashville? Or school teachers that struggle taking care of those kids in the school, the firefighters, police officers, the list is so long. So Nashville, can we say as a principle, as a value system, let us care everybody. Not just about the developers building wonderful buildings. You're not one of them, Eddie. Look at our education system. Can we say, as a principle, we need to have education that results in demonstrable opportunity for residents? We haven't shown the map today, but there is a map that Dr. Harper put it together. If you look at Franklin Road from downtown, west of Franklin Road, Oak Hill, Forest Hills, Belmead, very few people who live in those neighborhoods send their kids to Metro Nashville public schools. What's left is east of Franklin Road, all the way to the north. But we said that the largest households in Nashville are headed by single mothers. So many kids with ELL, like myself, English language learners, in the school system. Those who don't live what they call opportunity neighborhoods. And you would say, is there equity out there when we look at the geography of our schools? Do they all get just same amount of money? Or there are those who need more resources to remedy past injustices? So can we embrace as a principle to say, let us make our education one that delivers? Not just 1 out of 5 being able to go to college and finish. How about our land use policy? I'm not an expert on that, but many American cities, including Nashville, some of the social ills that we're dealing with today are as a result of land use policy that was encouraged by local governments, that encouraged segregation. So now if you look at the schools we have in Nashville, if you look at the poor neighborhoods, gentrification is a result of poor land use policy. In many American cities, the landfill where the trash goes is located in the minority neighborhoods. We know about redlining and all kinds of things. So it's time we need to embrace a land use policy that has a purpose, not just repeating what we've been seeing many years. Do we need to allow factories and other job opportunity creators to be in neighborhoods not far from where those who need the jobs reside? Why do we have to be stuck 100-year-old policies that was intended to segregate? I can give you an example that a census tract in North Nashville that has the highest unemployment rate. And if we profile those people individually, probably 90% of them don't even have a car. But the jobs we create are far from where they live. And when you recruit Oracle, Amazon, I don't think they will work there. They don't have the skill sets. It's not Amazon refuses to help them. So can we say then we need to have a land use policy as a principle, as a value system? We need to re-examine and say, does it benefit the need that we have in Nashville today? What about how we care for the indigent residents? I know we have legal aid society that helps when it comes to certain things, public defender's office, but one of the longest institutions in Nashville is General Hospital. If you all watch, every year they are in deficit. And there is a question that says, what do we need to do? Do we need to give more money, or do we need to ask them to come up with a good business? There is a city called Austin in Texas. People made the decision to increase the sales tax, few more cents. And then they said that we need to send it our indigent hospital so that people who are uninsured would be able to get the care they need. So in Nashville, can we say, let us explore our resources and say, can we find a way people that are indigent would be able to get the basic care that they need for their diabetes, hypertension, just preventative medicine. But that has to be a principle that we all need to agree as a city. How is the level of research here? I mean, we presented data points, but you need to profile your community so that when you know who needs what, you can focus on your resources. We have wonderful universities from Vanderbilt, Belmont, Lipscomb, Trevecca, Tennessee State, Meharry, and many others, community college. As far as we know, when we contacted them, they have few programs or research focus that is intended Nashville. But you can go to Baltimore and see Johns Hopkins, what they do. You can go to University of Milwaukee, that has a poverty center. You can go many places in the country. And it seems that our academic institutions and the research they lead are not aligned with the Nashville needs. You have Peabody College, which is, I know I'll get in trouble, but it's okay. A wonderful institution as far as, and some of graduates are sitting in this room. A great institution. Nationally renowned school for education. Drive a mile to the east and you get to Carter Lawrence Elementary School, where poor kids from Edge Hill attend. How come you have one of the poorest performing schools a mile away from Peabody College? I'm just sharing with you that our value system is not aligned with each other. Nothing is wrong. I'm not just talking about Vanderbilt, all the institutions. Business development. We've seen the influx of high talent workers from other states. One of the data Dr. Harper shows is that majority are coming from California, New York, and Illinois. And if you walk by near the Gulch, you can see what I'm talking about. What happened to the old Nashvillians? They are pushed farther and farther. So you would say, if we're going to recruit a business, who we targeting? Who is the intended beneficiary when it comes to employment? If you bring in more people from California, it's a free country. But if it's our effort, we need to examine and say, maybe we need to bring old manufacturing that pays $20, that's still better than minimum wage, and target a neighborhood where the unemployment is so high. So we don't have that now. We compete with other cities and try to attract corporate headquarters, but those high rises in downtown Nashville does not help people on Brick Church Pike or ENIAC that are looking for jobs. So we need to have as a principle and say, if we're going to invite someone, there has to be some way to benefit those who need the most. Otherwise, our value system is misaligned. Look at our lending and financial institutions. When it comes to minority access to capital to do business, this is the reality of being in America. No matter how much effort is made to encourage minority business to be part of that, they don't even have the cash flow. And no institution is lending them unless people have to go through a lot of scrutiny. And once you live in the red line area, your credit is already tweaked. So can we say in Nashville as a principle, we want our lending institutions who are full of cash to allow talented small businesses owned by minorities to have access to lending and loans? Do we even think about what we call economic mobility? We have generations that are poor. And sometimes you have to say, come on. There is no reason for generation after generation to remain poor. Something needs to happen and take the mobility, opportunity to those who need the most. Our workforce strategy, when you look at our community college and other things that we have are wonderful, but are they targeting the 200,000 people that make $39,000? That's the question. Or we recruiting just for restaurants, retail, those who only pay $10 an hour. Can we say then, as a principle, we need to embrace a workforce strategy that benefits the most? And we say, can we have a commitment to actions that expand women's work and life opportunities? We talked earlier about the Great Resignation. It was women who left the workforce. They couldn't have childcare because the schools were closed during the pandemic. So, as a principle, can we factor everything that we do, how that would impact women's life and their opportunities? So the question that I said is that earlier, it comes back to say, well, these principles look good. Any community can do. The question is, what prevents Nashville from embracing things like this? I don't think I have said anything controversial. We need to have a good workforce system, good land use system, great schools, well-being for everybody, access to loans that help. Come back to the question I asked it earlier, which is, who owns Nashville? Because when you want to embrace something, someone has to feel that they are a stakeholder and they own it. As Eddie said, we, the people of Nashville, we own Nashville. All the wonderful institutions, elected officials, faith communities, nonprofits, we all own it. But the question is, as I said, Nashville economy has been doing wonderful. When I came to Nashville about 33 years ago, there were 25% of our children living below the poverty level. Fast forward 33 years, 25% of the children is still in poverty. So something has to change. I mean, otherwise, Nashville has become a great place. Great leaders, great elected officials, very supportive. But city government alone cannot do this. I mentioned it, we're missing academic institutions to be part of. Some of them, they do good work. I'm not saying every institution. But also academic institutions, they have the pulpit to be able to bring together not only research, but also citizens of the community. So until we figure it out, and pay attention in this room, everyone cares about Nashville who came here this morning. Every nonprofit in this community, public agencies, faith communities, they all care about Nashville, seriously. But what's missing is the mechanism to create a universally accepted value system so that when elected officials come and go, things don't change. I know it's easy to blame the elected officials and say, you know, we need to make our leaders accountable, and they are really, and they're doing their best. But what happens is that we lack continuity. Many years we hear, my focus is this, and then after years you hear, my focus is this. Why don't we have a universally accepted focus? So whether you are elected this year or 10 years from now, those are the principles that guide and make Nashville a wonderful place. But individual organizations, they do wonderful. Pick any agency in Nashville. They meet with their mission, whether they're feeding, creating job opportunities, taking care of the homeless. Every organization does really great job. And it's on the record. It's not that I'm just creating, but everybody knows that. We have school teachers that do the best they can with what they see. But also we need to say, look at the geography. So we at Social Services, we can present this data every year, and we've been doing it. But we need the community. Perhaps we need to come back in this room after a month or so and say, who owns Nashville? If someone wants to answer that question now, I will be happy to hear that. But I think we all need to realize that we all own Nashville, from the elected officials, clergy, academic institutions, people who run. But we all have to feel that ownership. It seems everybody is like pushing to the other person. So I think it's a good idea to start saying, these are just some principles we saw in other communities, but there could be better Nashville ones. And I always like Nashville to create its own solutions rather than saying, in Atlanta, this is what they did. Baltimore, this is what they did. We don't live there, we live here. And as I said, we have a great history of civil rights, immigrant integration, and other wonderful things. Great elected officials, great public servants. I have no doubt that we can do that. But the question is, why don't we first agree on the principles that we would like to see Nashville is built? Occasionally when I drive, I see signs that say, take pride of Nashville, keep it clean. That's a good one. Why don't we have those kind of principles? Put it everywhere in Nashville. So if you're running for an office, then people can say, what are you going to do about this? So this time, because of this quiz, we believe that until we have a universally accepted and agreed principles for Nashville, we will be coming back next year, present you this quiz. 25% children below the poverty, 1988, 2022, 25%. That doesn't mean Nashville cannot do it. Nashville has done a marvelous thing, really. But what we need to be thinking about is, we can facilitate, we can come back to West End, the community church, not to argue and yell and show passion, yeah. But we need to say, let us agree on the principles. So if you all have some comments, we would like to hear. At some point, email us. Do you all think these principles would make a difference? I'd like to thank you all for coming. We agreed that we're going to conclude this by 10 o'clock. And in my concluding remarks, I say, thank you, Nashville, and thank you everybody who showed up this morning, because you all care about these issues. So thank you very much. I've been told that since we started, Council Lady Berkeley Allen is here. Thank you for being a great public servant. Do we have Nancy Van Rees? Thank you, thank you. So we have dedicated public servants. Again, thank you very much, but let us work on those principles.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.